Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a spooky spectacular, which would be Fake Accents Unite for this week. I hope that you're all doing well. I'm joined, as always, by, in this case, according to what you should be able to see on screen at the moment, the brained Britisher in his jar there. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good
love the Welsh.
Hold on. You insulting me again?
No, he said he loved the Welsh, Owain. If you choose to read any derision in there, that's entirely on you. Welcome. You'll also notice Owain here, who has designed this wonderful background and the thumbnail, which hopefully most of you should have seen the updated thumbnail. For some reason, Discord, when I posted in there, is unfortunately putting up the old version from last week. But welcome, man. Glad to have you with us.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much. Shemai, pawb.
We're also joined by Tailed Feature. Good evening, sir.
Fesgar ma.
Who's popped in. You'll also notice him on with his little gravestone on the thumbnail. And we have a new guest, someone never before seen on the channel before. A chap called Shandy. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening. I speak English, so I say hello.
Well, that's lame.
Well, it's like, is there another greeting that you were expecting, or just? Yeah. Oh, I see. Like the fact that my other guests, I have a Welshman and a Scotsman, and they both responded in their native tongue because
all the Celts said some weird nonsense, and so I just figured I'd say hello.
All the Celts. How do you feel about being called a Celt, Owain?
Well, the problem is define Celt, right? Because the Celts in the British Isles, there's a great separation between the Gaelic and the Brythonic. The Brythonic is a far more Latinized version of the Celts, whilst the Gaelic is kind of more pure in that sense.
Well, I believe Celt is derived from the Latin for troublesome.
And we're
the Celtic Chevalier in Austria.
I don't know about Halloween in general, but this conversation does strike me as something of a nightmare already. Nice to see regulars in the chat. I can see Matt, I can see Yiz, I can see Admiral Belsdeal and Burnsy and all sorts. Captain Bees, really nice to see you. Always a pleasure to have all of the regular supporters of the stream here. Without you guys, there would be no reason to do what we do, so it's a real pleasure to bring it to you. You'll notice there's a slideshow on screen. You can send in your memes, unfortunately at the moment, only on Twitter, and I'll get them added, or on Discord, and I'll get them added to the slideshow. And hopefully it'll all work and you can have some memes up there, especially if you create some memes for this stream in particular, assuming of course that we are somewhat entertaining, then it'll all go smoothly. Yeah, so it's been a bit of a weird week. The American election approaches. There are accusations of not just crack use, but also underage pornography from Hunter Biden. We've claiming that he also abused his niece. We've got stuff from the Biden campaign claiming that Donald Trump is utilizing Russian collusion. We've got the Russians who are saying they're not colluding. We've got Prince Harry, who is telling us now that he's completely cucked. I didn't want to bring them up, but I saw this story, and the headline is just too good to pass up, which is, "Living in Meghan's shoes helped Prince Harry see racial bias." So that's going to be interesting. There we've got some fact-checking going on. We've got Boris Johnson over on this side of the pond and his whole fiasco regarding school meals, which, again, I don't see what the big deal is. And John Cleese has also gone a bit wacky today, and so we'll be checking that out. What do we make of that kind of roundup of news, gentlemen?
It's good.
I didn't know there was an election in America.
No, well, I'm unsurprised that you do. Like, usually you just turn off the TV whenever anything comes on involving your favourite orangutan.
As I say, they shouldn't have a president anyway. It should be a viceroy.
A viceroy?
I've suggested David Starkey for the position.
I can only...
I hear he has time on his hands.
Indeed, I can. Whenever anyone says Viceroy, because obviously it's just that era and of my childhood, I cannot help but see in my mind's eye the Viceroy from the Trade Federation from Star Wars, from Star Wars Episode 1 of Phantom Menace.
That's what I think of too.
I just thought you were now going to tell me that you had some childhood memory of the curry house.
No,
in
no.
your vicinity, because there are quite a few curry houses around Britain calling themselves the Viceroy, aren't there? So I thought you were heading that way, and then you were even more disappointing by referring to
your personal
some
favourite
prequels
film.
nobody cares about.
To your favourite film of all time, Star Wars Episode 1. How you wax lyrical about how you spend your evening hours watching it over and over again, completely captivated by the performance of the young man who plays Anakin Skywalker as a child, laughing uproariously at the anti-Semitic stereotype of Watto.
Yeah, I mean, Jar Jar Binks has always been my favourite character, of course.
Indeed, and I mean, we all knew it, Britisher. It's so nice that you can come out to the audience like this. It makes sense.
Has anybody cottoned on yet to the fact that I have never watched them because I just couldn't be bothered? Because there are only 3 decent Star Wars films. Why would anyone watch anything else?
And they're all in the extended universe.
Man, that's so pretentious, bro.
Britisher, I don't know if you've met.
I know.
Britisher is lovingly pretentious, though. We do like.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
EC90 says, "Hey, so Hunter Biden has abused his niece?" ? We'll come on to that slightly later on, man. Yeah, but it all seems like a lot of information is going around, and it's hard to know what's real and what's not. Go on, Owain.
For matters of the YouTube, we should probably say allegedly at the end of that.
Allegedly. If you want allegedly on a T-shirt, do let me know. Hagnar the Viking says, "Ave Britisher, my sources told me you can read and write in German. Such a skill set is useful in disinfecting Middle Europe." Britisher?
Good evening, Hagnar.
It's always your favourite person to see.
Just try and keep it under control this evening.
Avoid the German talk. Sinskoen also says, "Only 62 seconds late for Halloween. Could be quite a bit more horrid. Nice to see all the regulars, etc. Did I slip?"
Wir waren 62 Sekunden zu spät. That's just for Hagnar the Viking.
Okay, there you go. Sinskoen saying, "Did I slip between the dimensions again?" Well, I didn't see you in the chat, Sinskoen. You weren't engaging along with everybody else, so that's what it is. But it is a pleasure to have you here, the resident Dane, to regale us with tales of how we're late once again.
I was so ready for him to tell us exactly how many seconds late we were, because I just love that level of autism. That's my level of autism I was waiting for. I'm disappointed.
He's Scandinavian, I believe, isn't he?
He's from Denmark, yes.
Well,
and if he considers that a dox, it's just the entire country of Denmark.
Although it's not a big country, you know.
Although I know. Although I maintain that probably he probably isn't actually from Denmark. It's just it's all an affectation. That's what I'm going for.
Well, I mean, who knows? Perhaps there will now be aggressive thugs stopping people in the street in any town in Denmark. Are you Subscoen? Given that you've now doxed him.
Presumably in Danish. Otherwise, they would do it.
The Danes. Apparently, it's a thing over there.
Colin P. Smith.
Danish is just a slovenly version of English, really. When you watch any of those Danish dramas, they're all just like, "Tack for the cafe. See you tomorrow."
Hurdy-gurdy.
How are you?
Colin P. Smith says, "Shouldn't it technically be Vicereign as opposed to Viceroy?" I have no idea. And
Just have the Archduke of each state, you know? Archduke of New Hampshire, Archduke of New York.
I can't say I've ever interacted with any real Viceroy. I can't say that I've ever...
there aren't many of them about.
Exactly.
These days, I believe.
I haven't seen it. It's not exactly referenced in popular media.
I believe. Is Andorra Viceroyalty?
No, it's an independent state. I mean,
but it has a position of it, like because the president.
Would it be a principality?
Oh, it's a co-monarchy. It is actually.
It's this imperial talk is hurting my head.
Yeah, it's a king of the president of France is also the king of Andorra, and the king of Spain is also the king of Andorra. It's a shared monarchy title. Sorry.
Well, put it like this, Shandy. If you need to try and see it from a perspective that would make it enjoyable for you, imagine a situation where the British dispatch their viceroy because they've decided to change the nature of Canada back to a British dominion rather than to have them an independent state. And then it being live on television as the British Viceroy enters the offices of government and just looks at Justin Trudeau and says, "You get out."
As much as that latter part of that sounds great, the first part doesn't sound too awesome.
Would we?
But of course, I'm biased.
And you're acting and you are acting as if you have a choice, which just doesn't really come around when the British decide to do something.
There are some rifles over here that would say otherwise.
Say Scotland got its independence, right? Would they be up for a viceroyalty?
Is that aimed at me?
Anything Scottish is.
If not, Scotland is more likely to be ejected than to actually get its independence.
Why do you even hang on to Scotland?
Because, believe it or not, the Scots are quite dear to the English.
I mean, you have Tailed and Dankula, so
we actually quite like the Scots. The Scots pretend not to like us. It's a sort of strange relationship.
But it's one of those. It's one of those funny things where we had a lot of conflict a little while ago, and now we have this kind of uneasy peace. And
it's just a little while ago. I mean, we're talking, a few centuries ago.
British, a little while ago, exactly, just a blink of an eye. Whereas it's not quite the same as the Irish, whereas like you walk down the wrong street in Dublin or Belfast and you're going to get shanked. It's just for being English.
Not yet.
Not yet. Although if Marcus has his way, Count Dankula, he'll outlaw the English and never speak to me again. So I think he'd probably arrange a visa for Sargon so that they could go and do their little live shows.
When you say, that isn't the case yet, I mean, I can see sort of, in the distant future, something like that may happen when people, walk down what was formerly known as Princes Street, which by that time will then be the Sturgeon Boulevard. That might be the sort of place where
imagine if the Scots have to use the Sturgeon Boulevard. Just like what a hideous name for a currency.
No, it'd be the Hamza Yusuf Street.
No, that would be the Royal Mile. That would be a new name. The Hamza Yusuf Avenue will be what was previously the Royal Mile.
Every note and coin would be stamped with the proud face of a black Scottish historical figure who has done more to change the history of Scotland than anyone. None of this William Wallace stuff.
You'll have, what was it, in Glasgow, you'll have Buchanan Street, which will be, I don't know, that will then be the Salmond Avenue.
It'll be George Floyd Way.
We're gonna walk onto the Salmond Avenue.
Yes, and they'll have to obviously remove the statue of, what's he called? Dewar, isn't it?
Donald Dewar, yeah.
Yeah, they'll have to take him off. They'll have a gilded statue of Alex Salmond at the top there.
Oh,
his name's
you looking forward to this?
No. Alex Salmond will actually be obliterated from history, right? He hasn't had enough. Sorry?
He's depersoned now, isn't he? After his alleged antics.
Half the SNP still love him and are covering for him, and the other half want him to be depersoned. So there's a bit of a fight going on at the moment, which I'm hoping will split the party.
But although I don't want late
known as the Battle of the Fishes.
The Battle of the Fish,
So-
British. Get your pluralities right.
Just so you English know, you're
You're
never getting
talking
rid of the
Scotland
Welsh,
here.
right? Just saying that.
I beg your pardon.
I just don't want Labour to
At least
retake
someone got
Scotland.
I doubt it.
That's not
I
happening.
doubt it.
I don't. Yeah, but they're not going to vote for the Tories, are they? Even if they hate the Labour, they hate the Tories more.
Well, I don't know. I mean, before Thatcher, we were quite happy to vote Tory. So
They are voting for the Tartan Tories.
I don't know. I don't know.
That was once
I
the nickname
know.
of the SNP.
yeah, because they were a centre-right party to begin with.
The SNP are more like SCP to me right now. So it's a little bit dodgy.
Child porn? I don't know what you're talking about.
The Scottish Communist Party, but
We already have one of them.
yeah. Oh, so that already exists somewhere. So Scowen said, I don't want to hear such vile accusations from degenerates that have managed to accumulate, I assume he's talking about our derision of Denmark, that have managed to accumulate 3,087,411 seconds of delay in just 2 years. Nidinga.
Just not got over the Battle of Copenhagen.
This is what I was waiting for. Thank you very much, Siskoa.
I also don't trust his estimation of the number of seconds, because he started to tell me the other day that we wouldn't notice if he just put a random number of seconds. We'd just believe him at this point.
Are you saying he's just making it up?
I'm saying he's just making it up. In fact, I don't think we've ever been late for this stream ever in the whole history of our running.
I don't recall ever being late for
No,
this.
neither do I. I think we arrived precisely when we intended to. That's
So we're taking the CNN route here. We're just going to completely forget that ever happened.
It didn't happen. You got to Gulag.
That's right.
It's very simple. But yes, we've also got. What were we talking about? We went off on like this really weird tangent.
You're talking about Meghan Markle, and then you ended up saying, "So, Tailed, what do you think about independence?"
Oh yes, we were talking about ejecting Scotland or Scotland getting its independence because of currency. And why do we hold on to Scotland? It's like, yeah. So I'll finish that segment off by saying we dearly do love the Scots, and it was. I don't know if it was just my area, but we were like, oh, we really hope the Scots don't actually get their independence because
I remember when the day it happened. We had an out of school uniform day the time after, and I wore like a kind of my 2012 football jersey. The Union Jack shirt, because I was very proud the Scottish said no. I know this mate. I was genuinely very upset that Scotland might leave back then.
What was the result?
I
That
know
was,
you don't care if we go.
It was 55-45 right?
Back then.
Yes, that's what I meant back then. Yeah, but just remember, the SNP are not Scotland, and they have a minority government.
Indeed.
And just remember, England, you're never getting rid of us. Wales, we're stuck with you forever.
Yeah,
born in England's side.
Literally.
We are the sidecar.
The sidecar. You're the Clarissa to our Jennifer, and if you get that reference, then you are truly god tier. But I doubt it.
I don't.
No, that is a reference to. And I'll just give a little pause for effect, just so that everyone in the channel in chat can sort of catch up, see whether or not they get the idea. It's a reference to a cookery show from the 90s called Two Fat Ladies, who drove around on a motorbike with a sidecar.
Yes.
And did cookery with a lot of fat and sugar across the nation. So that was good. Yeah, I can see a couple of people knew that in chat there. Amazing.
And one of them died.
They both died now. They're both dead now. Yeah. Jennifer died of lung cancer, which is why they ended the series after only 3 seasons. And Clarissa died in 2014, I think. So yeah, that's that. Although she was quite old and overweight still. So there you go. Just going to go through the rest of the super chats and then we'll crack on with the news for the day. Hagnar Viking says, that confirmed my sources the moment we get rid of this Victorian idea that you can't just raise German cities, you would be the perfect spy. Brisha, apparently. should have just upkept the walls to keep the Picts out. Look at how these barbarians vote. They want to be independent serfs to the German Empire. I think he's referencing Scotland there.
Yes, I would still just like to point out that the wall that everybody always refers to doesn't actually follow the current border between England and Scotland.
No.
So there's quite a lot of England north of the wall.
Not unless we take it back.
Have you seen the film Quarantine, any of you?
Oh.
No.
Is
that the one with Dustin Hoffman?
No, it's a film. It's a film about us there being a plague and us literally locking Scotland away behind an enormous wall. It's Kate Beckinsale, I think, of sort of underworld fame, and it's one of those crazy things. And everyone beyond the I'm gonna get told off now because I'll probably have got the title of the film wrong. But they basically have to the plague starts up again in the south in England, and they have to go back across the wall to see if they can find a cure by finding any immune people. But it turns out all the Scots have gone savage and now for some reason are sort of playing Mad Max or living in castles the entire way. It was very good.
Like gone savage. It doesn't take much.
It was called Doomsday, not Quarantine. So there you go. I thought
a mad premise.
I don't know if it was called Doomsday though. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Regardless,
one of the problems is that sometimes films are marketed with different titles in America than they are in Europe.
That's also possible. But it was, I don't know, it was enjoyable. It kind of had a terrible ending, but you do get to see someone roasted alive in a Scottish Colosseum. So that's always kind of fun.
That was a good night out.
It's a good night out. Mr. Wilson.
Were they battered before they were roasted?
No. They were just put on a spit and sort of turned round and round and round. So, Mr. Will Guitar says, Wales lost in the rugby. How glorious is that, sirs?
It isn't. Lost to France.
Well, you lost to France?
Yes, we lost to France.
God.
I don't know a lot about rugby, but my father-in-law loves rugby and loves the Seven Nations or Six Nations tournament.
Does he love rugby or does he love rugby union? Because there is a difference.
If he's Six Nations, it's rugby union. It's rugby union.
Oh.
Whatever. He loves the Ireland team because he's Irish, right?
Right.
So he was watching Ireland play Italy, and of course, Italy got its ass kicked because
it's Italy.
Italians playing rugby. Okay, and then.
Yeah.
And then basically there's England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and then France and Italy, which are the kind of the redheaded stepchildren of the whole thing, because you don't go to France thinking you're going to have a good rugby team.
France are one of the top rugby teams, always have been. It's one of these odd things that every time Britain ever invented the sport, France was like, well, we must have a go at this as well. We have to be better than them. The only one they didn't was cricket. But yeah, so it's just we lost to France this week, but that was away in France. I'll have you know.
One thing worth pointing out, of course, when it comes to the Irish rugby team, is that it is the island of Ireland.
It's a united team.
It includes Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
it's one of those sort of strange
invention.
phenomena where, for all the differences, for some reason, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland can, Catholic and Protestant alike, can jointly cheer the rugby team.
Because they're playing the English.
Well, see, one of the great things about rugby as well is you have the Lions, which still exist, which is the British and Irish Lions, which is kind of an old remnant of when Ireland used to be part of Britain, which still exists. And like every 4 years, we play a game as all of the Isles together against either Australia, South Africa, or New Zealand, which is quite fun.
I assume, Owain, that your rugby team is going to do the honourable thing and commit seppuku.
Seppuku. I always say Duke. We're playing them again next week, so we'll see what happens.
Well, they know that the gallows will be on standby. It's like, in fact, the French will have their guillotines out, on the other side. So.
We lost to France as well in the Six Nations, remember?
I don't know what you're talking about. Architect of Faith says, after obtaining independence, Scotland will move their capital to Dundee in honour of Taild's native area. The SNP is the National Socialist Party of Scotland. Tailed.
Fuck you.
I don't even think there was anything particularly offensive in there or jibing at you, just in reference to your name.
It was the Dundee bit.
I see. Anakin Cringe Walker says, in our Crusader Kings 2 game, Taffy is, that's Harry Angledeeve, is playing as the Welsh and accidentally got himself vassalized. He clicked yes without reading. The oldest English trick in the book there is.
How do you accidentally get yourself vassalized?
I imagine he was offered the opportunity to be vassalized, and instead of clicking no, he clicked yes.
Yes. What is this strange language? Why is it not all written in gibberish? Nah, and adu, which would be yes and yes to no.
Oh dear. Hagnar Viking says Germania delenda est. Aaron Telford says Doomsday was a funny film with Malcolm McDowell. I think so. I think it's Malcolm McDowell. And Hagnar as well says, when the Welsh fail, can the Anglos finish the job and just annex and outbreed the Celtic failure? You know, I think he doesn't really like anyone except the English. Starting to get the idea that he wants to divide it.
Doesn't he hates Germans, right?
Yes.
Then why does he hate the English?
He doesn't hate the English. He seems to have.
Or why does he love the English but hate everyone that's like German and Celtic? Because the English are just like German and mutts, basically.
The fuck did you just say to me?
Coming from an American.
Yeah. Oh. Chat's pointing out you can't. Chat's saying you can't outbreed a Scotsman.
I just remembered something.
This is terrifying stuff coming from someone who's a member of the Pennsylvania Dutch. Because of course the German word for German is Deutsch, which is frightfully similar to the word Dutch, isn't it?
Yeah, it was because all the people that spoke English in the area were like Deutsch, yeah, Dutch, whatever.
Okay.
I just remembered something as well. The Welsh nationalists this week proposed one of their mad ideas, and I'll propose this to Tail because it regards Scotland. So the Welsh nationalists have come around to the idea that Wales wouldn't work on its own, and so the idea now is once we gain the independence, we would propose a federation with Scotland.
Oh yes, the great conglomerate of the Welsh and the Scottish.
That was what was it? Alex Salmond once referred to as the Ark of Prosperity, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, yes. The idea is that we're going to hand over all our power to Scotland. So,
they can have some more power if they take on all of the debt. So that's
fancy taking this on, Tails.
No, you can keep it.
So you wouldn't so much be Wales anymore, but southwest Scotland,
I guess.
Oh,
okay.
It's not a great idea.
Oh, wine. How do you look in a kilt?
Well, a Welsh kilt, a Welsh tartan isn't that great, to be honest.
Oh, there is such a thing. There was I thinking I was joking, and
no, there's a tartan. There's a tartan for Wales, and plus, I don't want to wear my tartan. I'll get beaten up by a Scotsman, or anyone who has Irish ancestry in the Scots.
I think the Scots don't care enough about the Welsh for that to really be an issue.
No. My clan is not well liked, and I don't want to wear it.
Tailed, how good are Scots actually at reading tartans?
No one cares anymore. I mean,
would you be able to identify the sort of top half dozen or so, or is it really has it completely fallen into misuse?
Well, I mean, I could probably recognise a few, but then I'm quite sad. So, but I think just the average Jock Thompson fit in the street would be unlikely to recognise any. The only time where I could see it really being a problem is if, because some football teams have their own tartans as well. So if you're wearing a Rangers tartan in the wrong area,
the
old firm tartan in the wrong area, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but generally speaking, you're allowed to wear anybody's tartan. It doesn't. You don't. There's this kind of myth that you need to be of that family and all that kind of stuff, but it's not really true.
All right.
But when are the Scottish cultural appropriation shills going to come out in force and start saying, you can't wear that tartan?
Once Hamza Youssef gets hold of that part of the law,
Well, I don't know, because the SNP have a tartan and there's also an Islamic tartan, so there you go.
There is an Islamic tartan.
Yes.
Blood red, right?
I just give
That's a phrase I never thought I'd ever hear. An Islamic tartan.
Afraid
How
so.
much pink is in the Islamic tartan?
Oh, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. I mean, the British Empire got everywhere, right? I mean, it makes sense that there would be some cultural bleed somewhere, right?
Yeah, in Scotland.
Yeah.
It was made by... Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But what I mean is, if you would, you can't attribute this to the British Empire, because I could imagine that there would be things such as tartans for units from various regions. But when it comes to a purely religious tartan, surely that is kind of some more recent identity politics creation.
Yes, it is recent. It's just the last few years.
All right, let's. We'll. I'm going to save any extra super chats that have come in for now, and let's move on to some actual news, shall we, gentlemen?
Please.
So we've been. Oh, poor Staled. This is the most interaction he's had to make on a stream in a while. What's going on?
Exhausting, poor man.
So. We do have, let me see where this is. I can turn off this slideshow. I can put on the news. Look, we're also professional now. Dual monitor setup, so I can have everything, and I can still see the chat, which is marvelous. So, there's this thing at the moment with Hunter Biden, right? So the whole U.S. election, it's going to be the big story, and doing this. So I've got several things here, including what Kamala Harris's experience tells us about US politics, the presidential debate fact check, and the whole thing with Hunter Biden. So the article from the BBC says President Donald Trump has repeatedly accused his Democratic White House challenger Joe Biden of wrongdoing in regards to Ukraine and China whilst vice president, and Biden naturally denies this. So the New York Post article says that there was an email from 2015 in which an advisor to the to Vadim Pozyarsky, I'm butchering that pronunciation, but basically the minister for Ukraine, thanking Hunter Biden for inviting him to meet his father in Washington. Hunter was a director on the board of Burisma, which is a Ukrainian-owned energy company, while his father was the Obama administration's point man on US-Ukrainian relations. So, Hunter was one of the several foreigners on the board of directors for there. And then he was paid something like $3 million a year. I don't know why there's a car alarm or a horn going off across the road. I apologise for that if that's coming through. And so the campaign acknowledged that Mr. Biden could have had this interaction if it was informal with this advisor, because the campaign says there was no record of any such meeting on the official schedule from the time, because if I am going to perform, an act of blatant corruption, I'm going to put it on the official schedule for my meetings whilst in the country, naturally. As we know, Hunter Biden is someone with no experience of energy companies or energy industry in general. We know he was paid an obscene amount of money and had a horrendous drug habit, and there has been allegedly a couple of laptops filled with child pornography and also a video of Hunter himself taking part in some of these acts, which apparently is in the hands of, I think it's the FBI. So, first off, what do we make of this story? I'll go to the American that we have first, just to ask him what he sees from his side of the pond.
So the big thing for me is not so much what's happened here, it's what has happened to the story about it. Because a lot of people that are Biden supporters don't care that his son was a meth head. Like, they really don't, or a crackhead, or whatever drugs he was doing. They don't really care. They probably do those drugs themselves, or they know people that do, and they're like, who cares? It's my own person, my own body. What does it matter? So I don't think that many of the stories here are going to sway a lot of people that are already Biden supporters, that are hardcore Biden supporters. The issue that's hit a lot of people harder is that as soon as this came out, the social media companies and mainstream media, the legacy media like CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, all these places just shut the story down completely. They blocked I think Twitter blocked the link from being shared. Although they've undone that, they've still not given back the New York Post their Twitter account.
Really?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, that might have changed within the past couple days. I was off camping, so that might have changed, but I'm pretty sure that's still the case. And the big issue here is they're not even saying this isn't real. They're just saying that this is potentially Russian disinformation, so we're not even going to let you talk about it, which is pissing a lot more people off because now they're saying, wait a minute, who are you to say what I can and can't talk about? I know that's partially what pissed me off, and so I think there's a lot more to do with the censorship part of it than the actual scandals as well, because a lot of people are going to look at this and they're just going to say, well, Trump's kids are probably doing things, so that doesn't matter. So in their mind, to someone who doesn't know any better or doesn't follow this on a very regular basis, they're going to look at it and say, well, Trump's kids are probably doing the same thing, so that's a net zero. It's the censorship of the story, I think, that might be pushing people at least away from Biden. I don't know about towards Trump, but at least away from Biden, I would argue.
Gentlemen, others? Any comment on what Shandy said here? Or have you not been paying attention at all?
Well, it's difficult. One of the problems is sort of cause and effect, particularly the effect part, is always very, very difficult to establish. And particularly, we haven't seen any sort of polls really immediately after this. And even if you then talk about the polls, everybody disbelieves the polls at the moment. My personal view of the whole thing is that this could be a complete campaign ending situation.
Right, yes.
Not because of the broader allegations. I mean, when you were sort of saying, oh, it could be laptops with child porn or whatever, there are endless versions of what is on those laptops. So I think there is a bit of deliberate misinformation going on as to, how much worse can we make the story be. But to me, the idea of having any sort of election campaign and pretty much a week before or so, a video becomes available that is of somebody having,
having a foot
somebody
job
close to the actual candidate having sex. That is kind of like the ultimate meme. And even though it is not the candidate himself, it is someone who is kind of tied by various previous mention to the candidate and is related to him directly. And you've just got the feeling to me, this looks like a very, very sort of dirty trick to release a video like that. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the questions surrounding Burisma and the Ukrainian government, and how on earth did this chap get this job and all this money, that is perfectly sort of viable within a sort of a campaign to be releasing such information. Once you start releasing porn, because let's face it, trying to claim, oh, this happened on a Chinese server and whatever, this will be the Trump campaign. Let's go back to old Cicero, the question, cui bono, who benefits? It's fairly obvious whence this comes. And that's where you sort of think, I think one has crossed the line here. I'm not sure this will fare well over time, because if this is where politics goes now, then heaven help us for the politics of the future.
I don't know that you could say that this is something new. I mean, in the lead up to the 2016 election, we were all talking, well, not all of us, but there were several people talking about how Stormy Daniels apparently said that Trump has a Mario mushroom penis. Like, who gives a damn? How does that have anything to do with his campaign? But people were still talking about it because Orange Man bad.
Oh, yes,
so
yes, indeed.
This isn't
Candace Owens famously was the chief executive of a magazine that had an article in it in which one was talking about how small Trump's hands and thus his penis must be. Yeah. It's funny that she then turned out to be the darling of the Republicans shortly after. But yes, but this crosses a line insofar as you're actually effectively releasing kind of the equivalent of revenge porn on a relative of a candidate. To me, that crosses a line, a distinct line.
What line, though? Because I guess one would argue that the reason you release this is to show how, like, the purpose politically would be, see if this is out there, and obviously this is detrimental to not only Hunter Biden, because if the person involved in that is not of legal age, that's a crime. But then also that just looks bad to Joe Biden and his campaign. Why? Unfortunately, I kind of lost where I was going with that.
So, in order to make
my
that point, I know where you were going.
Yeah.
Some people have been saying that this effectively verifies the identity and therefore verifies what has been said about the email and everything, because that's tied to it.
It's corroborating evidence, and also it's easy to look at that and say, well, if you don't want that to get out, it's easy to say, well, there's opportunity for blackmail. You are now at the behest of someone other than the people of the United States because you don't want this to get out there. And again, I think the corroborating evidence is important as well, because the big narrative with this story is that it's disinformation. Well, if this is disinformation, the Russians have been planning this for a decade or so.
So I want to weigh in on that, right? Because the Biden campaign has been calling it Russian disinformation, right? And Donald Trump has been saying, what he's been saying. Putin released a statement, according to Reuters, saying on Sunday he saw nothing criminal in Hunter Biden's past business ties with Ukraine or Russia, marking out his disagreement with one of Donald Trump's attack lines in the U.S. presidential election. So if it's coming from Trump's great friend Putin, he's throwing him under the bus a little bit here, is he not?
That's something I think that's really interesting as well. Why people would think that, given this evidence that has some corroboration through named sources, so like the emails that show business ties to China have been corroborated by people that have come out publicly and said, "This, I am so and so. I'm in these emails. These are legit. This isn't fake," right? So there's at least two people, and I forget their names, unfortunately, that have come out and said this. So we know the emails are real. So we know that there is business ties between China and Hunter Biden, and we know there are business ties between Hunter Biden and Ukraine, in that he was on the board of imprisonment for a while. And we also know that he got money from the former mayor of Moscow's wife for $3.5 million or something to that effect. So there are business ties to these three countries. Why in the world would those three countries not be supportive of the people they're giving money to? Russia, China, and Ukraine don't want Trump to win, because Trump, if anything, has been someone that is...
But he's abrasive.
He's abrasive. He's been more aggressive with trade than Obama was, for example. Obama was very much conciliatory towards China, especially. So I don't understand where this idea comes from that somehow Trump is in bed with all these places, when it's actively in these countries' best interest to go with his opponent, for anything other than simply business.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's been some talk because about a week before this story broke. We were alerted to a video from a quote unquote Chinese whistleblower who was saying that they had, that these laptops existed and there was going to be some evidence come out, and he was saying, though it's poorly translated, something along the lines of, China, the CCP collected a lot of this information and they are they're letting the Bidens know of their obligations. And I wonder what to make of that, because I go, right, well, that says to me two scenarios. One, it's possible they think Biden has this completely in the bag. It doesn't matter what they throw at him because they're there. And so they're reminding him that when he does get elected, he needs to... He needs to remember his obligations to the Chinese, or they will throw him under the bus with a lot more dodgy stuff. The other option is that the Bidens made a deal with the Chinese and then didn't fulfill their side of an obligation, and so now they're being punished for it, so to speak. And a third option just arises now, which is that Trump's campaign is pretending to be China, pretending to blackmail the Bidens over something that they may or may not have done. So it's a strange set of events.
Has anyone else noticed how China is becoming more and more like a mafia state, the way it's going about its foreign affairs?
Becoming?
It is.
That's how communists work.
Yeah, I know. But as you just think about it, the way they talk, supposedly talking to Biden is like they are a mafia. They're a mafia with dirt on him, trying to get them into the circle. Of course, though. There is a mass underneath the surface. I think that it's quite obvious there's a massive geopolitical game being played out here.
Well, obviously, the Chinese don't exactly do ethics.
And I think this ties into certain things. I think there's a move. This is my own thinking. I think there's a move in Europe, in the continent especially, and in China, who have partnered together to try and knock the US off the top pedestal. Off of the top. I'm starting to think this is because the more and more I see it, I look at the treaties that are being signed, looking at the 2030 vision, how much that's so geared towards saying the US is no longer going to be the superpower, and the people pushing this the most are the EU and the Chinese. And so there's something going on here that we're not clearly seeing, I think. I'm being a bit conspiratorial, forgive me.
The timing is the most suspect thing ever. I think that there's absolutely nothing accidental about the timing. Because yeah, sorry, go on.
I would say, how should we say? I mean, if it's the Chinese trying to remind the Bidens of their duties, so to speak, they would just send them the stuff. They wouldn't publicize it. You don't let off the nuke as a kind of reminder, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's the thing. Is this the nuke, or do they have worse?
Well, yeah, but do you understand what I mean? This is already something that can sink you. When it comes to the whole provenance of this thing, I think that is where there is already a big question mark, because the official story is that it's a laptop that was left at a place, at someone who's, is it registered blind or something like that? And you just go, I don't know, this sounds sounds like a kind of cover story for we've obtained it from somewhere else.
I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I don't think the shop guy that turned in the laptop is blind. I just think he's I think that's not true, to be clear. I also, if you think about the scenario, so Hunter Biden, there are also documents showing that this person had the laptop and turned it into the FBI. This has been corroborated with actual court documents that have been FOIA'd to say, yes, this person submitted this laptop to the FBI, and that's where this stuff comes from. The problem is, why in the world would Hunter Biden leave behind a laptop with all this incriminating shit on it? Well, the answer is simply, he's a druggie. He's stoned out of his mind.
He's a crackhead.
Forgot about it. It's not that if you've anyone that is just tweaking like crazy, they do stupid stuff. And a big stupid thing is you forgot to pick up the laptop. And then, and especially if you're someone like him, where you've got like, if you on a whim are like, I need a new laptop, you call up Daddy Joe, and Joe goes to Best Buy and buys you a damn laptop because he's got more money than God and he can afford that. So it's not like this would have been a big deal to someone like that. Oh, I forgot this laptop, and he might not have even been in his right mind when he dropped it off, when all that content that was made, he might not even have known that stuff was on there. So I don't think it's out of the question to say that in a drug-induced haze, Hunter Biden forgot to pick up this laptop and then it just slipped his memory. Like, I mean, I forget to do stuff all the time. And then after so many months, it becomes that shop's property, and they go through it to see, okay, what's on here? Let's wipe it and maybe we can sell it or something. And then they find, oh, this is actually kind of important.
Yeah, but the smart thing is that who he gave it to. Did he go? He went to the FBI first, did they? And they said they wanted nothing to do with it.
He made a copy, and went to the FBI. I think and I don't know if this is true, so you can fact check me on this, but I believe his uncle was a veteran that knew someone in the FBI, which is actually fairly common. There's a big veteran to FBI pipeline in the United States. So that's makes sense. So they probably said, hey, we got something here that might have to do with someone who's, potentially a security risk, right? And sent off the laptop. But of course, this guy, having his head screwed on correctly, made a copy of this stuff beforehand. So that's why he then, after several months of nothing happening with the FBI not doing nothing about this publicly, got concerned and gave a copy of it to Rudy Giuliani.
Right, and then Giuliani, and obviously Barnum got involved in there somewhere.
Probably through Giuliani, yeah.
Yeah. And then this is where it gets interesting. See, is like what. So Barnum must have taken it they must have strategized how to release this then, and went to the New York Post. They went to Fox first. They said they didn't want anything to do with it. Then they went to the Post, didn't they? After that.
Yeah, and things to remember too. Everybody says Fox is right wing, and they're just more right wing than everybody else. Tucker is really the only. Well, there's Hannity too, but he's just a shill for Trump. Tucker is like the only right wing guy on there that's legitimately right wing. Everybody else is at best center, like a Brett Baer or a Britt Hume. And I mean, you saw. I don't know if you guys saw the debate with Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is a Democrat. He is a left. He's on the left. He's not like a leftist, like a communist, but he's on the left and definitely supports Biden over Trump.
Establishment. Neocon.
Yes, he's the establishment, and a lot of Fox is still the establishment. And I remember my father telling me this when I was a kid, back when like late '90s and stuff. The Fox only takes the right stance, the stance on the right, because everybody else takes the one on the left.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're not doing it because of any principle. They're doing it because money is. That's where the views are. So I would caution that. But yeah, to bring this recursion back to the top. Yes, I believe they went to Fox, and Fox, the neocon establishment there, was like, this seems kind of crazy. I don't know. And there's a lot of stuff. They might have just been like, whatever. And then they went to the New York Post, and the New York Post picked it up and published it because they are friends with Trump. Let's not kid ourselves. They are biased. Yeah, they are friends with Trump. They are biased towards Trump. So they said this will help him get reelected, and published it.
By the way, I just did a bit of Googling. This chap, Mac Isaac or whatever, who is the owner, he is legally blind. He's registered blind. I don't know whether that means he's completely blind or whether he's just registered blind, but he has some very limited vision. To me, this just does sound a bit strange. As in, this almost sounds to me like we've actually obtained this by some means, but we've had to come up with some backstory.
Fall guy.
But why? I don't understand. What about the idea that some guy stoned out of his mind forgot this laptop that he was using at the shop? I mean, when it's so easy for him to get a new one, dropping it off.
And for some reason, the chap just happens to be blind and can't identify.
Well, just because you're legally blind, that's just
legally blind is more about.
It can be. severely short-sighted or severely
Yeah,
long.
it's probably something that he just
Well, yes,
can't
but
drive a
as I say, you
car.
would therefore be in a position whereby you can't identify the person who handed in the laptop.
No, that's not the same thing. That's like you can't react quickly to quick
also,
stimuli.
Also, if Hunter Biden walked into your shop, would you know it? So, if the son of Boris Johnson walked into your your flat and had a cup of tea with you, would you know? I mean, obviously you would know if you were
This
letting
is
someone
in
into the
Delaware,
flat.
isn't it?
But my point is,
So-
yeah, if someone, the son of a politician walked into your shop and bought something from you or dropped something off or did their dry cleaning, would you know who they were unless they explicitly told you?
And also, if you say, for example, he didn't need to recognize that this was Hunter Biden at the time that the laptop was dropped off. All he needed to do is start to go through the laptop, see, there's all these emails from Ukraine. Oh my God, there's what we think is what looks to me like pornography with someone that might be underage. What the hell's going on here? Do a little bit of digging. That looks like Hunter Biden. I mean, it doesn't need to be that this person knew this was Hunter Biden from the very beginning. This could have been just simply through the course of trying to figure out what the hell was going on in an attempt to report it to the police or the FBI that they figured out it was Hunter Biden when they handed it in.
I think it's easy when you just go looking through the emails and stuff, just see the name Biden and see it being such a high profile names, high profile corporation and stuff. You put two and two together.
As such, I think we can sort of see that on this point we don't necessarily see eye to eye. One other one that I would like to put out, which I think is actually relevant to the story, but doesn't actually seem to be much debated, is the question whether Burisma were actually the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we know that we know that Biden intervened. I mean, he bragged about it in some kind of forum, didn't he? We've got videotape of it. But Biden said it was the chief prosecutor who was actually the corrupt person. The emails seem to be referring to the fact that there seems to be corruption going on, and that the authorities are putting the company under pressure to effectively pay out, or else we will be making your life misery with investigations. Or, of course, it could be that the company is dirty and that there was a rightful investigation into them. Now, if they were in fact, as their emails say, but I mean, that could just be a polite way of saying it, if you know what I mean. But if they are in fact not the corrupt entity, but the government was the corrupt entity, and Biden's intervention countered that corruption, wouldn't that put a different spin on it? It would still not answer the question of how the hell did his son have this very high-paying job, but it would mean that the action actually got rid of corruption rather than was the product of corruption. And the thing is, I think from afar, from outside Ukraine and whatever, we have no way of knowing which one of those two versions is the correct one. Fair point?
Yeah, I agree. I would say, though, there's a third scenario that it's a much muddier one, though. And it would be that they're both corrupt, because corruption isn't necessarily black or white. There's shades of gray when it comes to corruption. And it's very likely that both parties involved there, both Burisma and the Ukrainian government's prosecutor, are corrupt and shady in many ways. But in the end, though, you're right. I agree that there's really no way to tell from the outside, because it's Ukraine and they're notorious for their corruption.
I mean, I once, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago on the week that was, I kind of mentioned how one has to be careful, when it comes to the issue of people getting jobs like this. Let's face it, to most of us, it just looks like outright corruption, and it is corruption. But in legal terms, it's not corruption, insofar that when high-ranking politicians here leave office, funnily enough, they all get picked up by large corporations for jobs for which they don't have to do anything.
Nick Clegg
various chancellors of the Exchequer spring to mind, who for some reason suddenly work for incredibly big financial institutions.
Happen to be on a quarterly meeting board.
Nick Clegg is the head of Facebook communication now.
Yeah. So basically, isn't what those companies really are doing buying political cover? That basically they have someone who can pick up the phone. And in that regard, was Burisma, in that regard, hiring somebody who was that political cover?
Burisma is currently being investigated, and there was a report titled Hunter Biden, Burisma and Corruption. However, it seems to be, again, lacking in a lot of substantive evidence.
As the question there is what most of us would see as corruption. I mean, what was it? Who was it again? There was the chap in the Tory, the old Chancellor of the Exchequer, Ken Clarke, who had how many things was he actually a board member or paid consultant or something like that? He was making an enormous amount from various corporations, even though he was an MP. Now, to most of us, that looks very, very dodgy, but in sort of common legal terms, that's perfectly permissible. And you sort of always wonder, why are these companies paying politicians money? Why are unions sponsoring Labour MPs? We all know really what's going on, but technically it's not corruption.
Well,
and I just wonder whether the Hunter Biden thing, even though to most of us, and I include myself in this looks bent, I just wonder whether it is really such an agreement, if you know what I mean, an arrangement.
I didn't realise you were so homophobic, Britisher.
I'm not quite sure what I said in which I've embarrassed myself here. But
and you know what? That's part of the joy of knowing you. No, any kind of closing statements on the Hunter Biden thing? Kind of want to move on to more general U.S. election talk. We've been going for a half hour on it, and we seem to be going around in circles a little bit of. Here are loads of hypotheticals, and we don't really have much information.
Well, yes, I mean, that is the nature of this beast, isn't it?
I guess I would just say it really will depend on how the public that has not yet voted, because a large portion has, how will they see this? Will they see this as like the censorship? Will that get them going against Biden? Will the corruption get them going against Biden? Will the potential child porn stuff get them going against Joe Biden? Or will it just be that they go, you know what, I don't care that his son's a meth head, I'm still voting Biden because Orange Man bad. So
I think most people have made it, like, if anyone hasn't made their mind up by now, I don't think there's
well, I feel bad for, like Stick said earlier today, I feel bad for those who voted for Biden already and changed their minds.
Yeah. Because
there's going to be quite a few of those at this point.
Well, I would just say never underestimate the power of a sex scandal. I mean, when it comes to politics, it really is absolutely toxic. Any sort of sex scandal, because there is a sort of invariably there is a deep fascination regarding these things, and I'm surprised how well the media and the social media companies are kind of managing to keep a lid on this for now. I mean, perhaps they're just hoping it's only a few days. But I somehow have got the feeling this is kind of the ultimate meme. It's viral.
The ultimate meme. Yeah.
And therefore, how you can keep this under control, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll manage it. But to me, when I heard of this, I just went, oh, dear God. And that wasn't because, that corroborates the other stuff or anything. To me, it was just, oh, Christ. They've got a video circulating of someone of the name Biden having sex. And that's when I just thought, that is absolutely lethal. So I to me, this looked like a sort of complete calamity. Right now, they're managing to kind of, stop the dam from bursting completely, but I just very much doubt that one can do that for a long period of time.
Right. Owine or Tailed, could you go to stream chat and attempt to read this particular sentence? This is from Plebeian in chat.
Right, so it's Anglo-Saxon. Good. I'm going to say this like a Scandinavian, not something. Krydne Eifn, Noswedda, or Av from Warsaw, or Walhall, meaning Valley of the Welsh. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I thought it'd be interesting to note that we have several schools in the West Midlands teaching Welsh instead of French or German.
Hashtag the Red Wall remembers.
Yes.
Apparently.
See, now that's some good stuff. Teach the North Welsh.
At what point is someone going to propose that we teach Italian so that the British can feel more at home, like it's the Romans again?
Well, we should be teaching Latin, yeah.
It would have to be Latin, wouldn't it, surely?
Latitalian, same difference, right?
Well, then I shall forgive you, because errare humanum est.
Oh, stop it, you gentlemen. Although I did see I think I watched a video recently which was entirely about whether or not Vidi Vidi Vici was supposed to be Weedy Weedy Vici.
That terrible theory that the V's were actually U's.
Or W's,
that's... I'm sorry, no way.
So it's Veni Vidi Vici.
Not just because it's like ridiculous, but also it completely cucks the language, right? Like it doesn't sound very nice at all. Right.
I don't know.
Where were we now? I'm gonna have to go through some of the super chats. We do this. Anakin Cringewalker. Hagnar says, "Good eye, Britisher. Add him to the cleanup list." Not entirely sure what he's referencing there. Anakin Cringewalker says, "Wales joining an independent Scotland." Back presumably in the European Union, so a parasite on a parasite with a third parasite holding the second on a leash.
Something tells me I'm on the leash.
I mean, are you safe right now, Owine? Are you tied? Are you a parasite on a leash who needs to be controlled?
I don't know. I'm currently on house arrest, as is all of Wales right now.
Oh yeah, how are the lockdowns in Wales?
Can't buy anything other than food, but. Yeah, only essentials. Socks are not essential. Clothes are not essential. Can't buy any of those things.
Oh yes, I think I have an article on this for later on.
We're pretty hardcore on lockdown down here.
Yeah.
Would you kind of agree that the public sentiment is that their own government is going to be gaga there?
Oh yes, very much so. But Wales is. It's a heavy split between those who say lock me down harder and who don't think I've gone far enough, and then those who think this is completely and utterly overkill.
Well, yes, but it's not so much about whether to have a lockdown or not. It's a matter of when it comes to this new definition of lockdown, whereby if you're already in a supermarket, in what way are you more infectious by picking up a pair of socks or a book?
I think it's about
when
time.
You're doing your food shopping.
I think
it's about trying to stop people loitering in the shop, and it's about trying to dissuade people from leaving their homes.
Well, no, from what I've heard, it's supposed to be about the fairness factor, that if bookshops have to shut,
it's a stupid
then
idea.
Then in Wales, supermarkets should also not allowed to be sell books.
That was just a line from the Welsh government to try and bring small businesses on side, because they know they've completely and utterly lost all faith. All the small businesses have lost faith in them entirely. Because the problem is unlike Scotland, the Welsh government actually does have a sizable anti-assembly movement, anti-devolution movement. At this point, there's something.
Do you include yourself in that?
I do not believe in the current settlement of devolution. No, I think it'd be far better to have Welsh MPs sit in a Welsh questions rather than have as it used to be, rather than have an actual entire devolved system. I think it's a ridiculous idea that was made up by Blair and rushed through. And because the Welsh devolution settlement never should have happened anyway. It was
You
only
do know why Blair did it, don't you?
It was to try and ensure Labour won permanently.
Precisely. He was trying to get these Labour dominions in which they would be sort of guaranteed Labour majorities forever and ever and ever.
He succeeded in Wales, but sadly in Scotland, the SNP did Labour better than Labour did.
You know which basically he then suggested, because there was the question about England. And what do we do about England then if Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland have their own assemblies? And then they came up with the idea of regional assemblies.
Yeah, so they could.
And where did they pilot it? In the northeast, which just so happens to be a solidly Labour area.
It's because they know that there'd be drift if there was still the UK, and it would be a limit on drift leftwards. It probably.
Well, I mean, if you would have an English assembly, you would have a Tory majority baked in.
Oh yeah, but the thing is that regional assemblies don't work in the UK. It's not a system that's natural to the UK.
Oh, they tried it, and yes, the Northeast told them where to put that particular idea.
Yeah, I think if we were going to do a system, there's only two systems that even could be considered, and I think that's either the Canadian or the Aussie systems, because they work on a common law function. But the problem is with the UK is it geographically it's not a large place. Even though there's a lot of population, geographically it's not a large place, and what happens is when you start devolving, you can with the UK you can devolve even further. If you go to come to Wales, for example, the north and south, there's a strong divide in North and South Wales. You go to England, and just in the West Country, you look between Devon, Cornwall, and Somerset. They all have their own different ways of looking at things.
Well, we could go full AA and have fully devolved city-states if we really wanted to.
So the way the UK functions is it functions on having a Westminster, but the problem is that Westminster is not supposed to be a big government. It's supposed to be Westminster's supposed to be there, and back in as it was for many years prior, the local government had far more power, and it didn't really need to come in contact with Westminster that often because Westminster was always too busy with foreign affairs to deal with them.
Well, if you want an example of how much power the local authorities had, just take a look at the town halls in Britain.
Oh yes, I like my town hall here. It's quite a very opulent place. It's quite very opulent. It's designed as a French chateau. My county hall, which is quite mad.
As I say, I mean that reflects quite. It's bricks and mortar in front of you. Just how powerful those institutions were. Yes.
And it's a shame that we've completely forgotten how that worked. And I think that after the war, it kind of because we centralized so much in the war for the rebuilding effort, but we never took that back. And then Attlee came in, which I think he cemented everything in place after that.
Well, I think over the decades there was basically a sentiment that the people who once ran the town halls, they were no longer there. So it's I mean, when you take something like Manchester, I mean, you just need to look at Manchester's town hall. It's unbelievable, But if you looked who basically held seats on Manchester Town Hall, I mean, those were the kind of cotton barons of Manchester, the people who are running the spinneries, the entire sort of industrial base of the place. And so they were the local millionaires, the local Donald Trumps, so to speak, and they sat on it. And I think what one realized was that by now it had very much become a sort of what we now see as town councillors. By sheer coincidence, when you see the chap who is now First Minister of Wales, he very much strikes you as a local town councillor type.
Yeah, that's because he is. He comes from my town.
And I think it's that was what caused the impression that basically central government was looking at these people and going, how much power do we actually want to leave in the hands of those folks? And I think that's why it drained away more and more. And of course, the less point there was in sitting on these councils, the less quality personnel got attracted to the position. So it kind of became a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, the problem is there's too many political positions to fill, and so thus you have overstretched. The talent is
Yeah.
overstretched, and it's very thin at this point. And so now you're starting, and the problem is as well. There's a culture of handing off your responsibilities within these institutions. So the responsibilities of a councillor and an MP have been drastically devolved.
Of course, one of the other benefits of having so many different authorities is for the majority of all the authorities, just follow the Scottish example, to be able to blame someone else for all their ills.
Yes, I've just heard as well. The son of Mark Drayford has been jailed.
The son of what?
The son of the First Minister in Wales has just been jailed for 8 years.
Why?
For an attack on a woman.
For attacking? What? You give them credit for at least coming up with something original. It's like Diane Abbott's son was jailed for meth. You've got Hunter Biden in America who's under investigation for crack and other stuff. Now you've got this First Minister of Wales is like, well, I can't go on a drugs charge. I've got to beat someone up in the street to get yourself put in there.
Yeah, so I just bring it back to COVID then. The thing about this whole virus is that why it was handled in a devolved manner, it boggles my mind. It should have always been a UK-wide approach. And why it never was is ridiculous.
Well, the whole point was they know that
from the government.
The whole reason is, Owain, they know that the economy is fucked if they don't start opening at least some of it up. Especially London wants to open up. Nobody gives a crap here. So it's all kind of I think Sunak, for all his smiles, is actually sweating bullets, behind the closed doors, because they know that it's not going to hit this year. But when it comes next year, things are going to go south very, very quickly unless they manage to do the whole bounce back thing. The Eat Out to Help Out scheme failed miserably.
I wouldn't say failed.
It underperformed, right, what it was expected to do. It caused a bounce back of about 6.5%, and they had predicted that it would do more, closer to 8.5%.
It doesn't help that the media was constantly saying, "Oh, the second wave's coming," throughout the entire thing.
Oh no, there's lots of different factors to consider. There's certainly nothing there, but you've got this thing. Then you've got this whole point, which was, okay, everyone can do their own local thing. So everyone else came out of lockdown, and Leicester was basically like, no, we're not doing that. We're staying in a lockdown. In fact, we might need to make it worse because it's tough up here. And then suddenly they're looking at things and they're going, right, well, now there's confusion. Can people visit Leicester? How close can you get to the thing? Is it effectively a quarantine for everyone? What about the people in the suburbs? Are they more at risk? Right, we need to have some kind of standardization, which is where the tiering system has come in. And now it's just like, well, we can add as many different tiers as we need.
Yeah, exactly. It's a mess of organisation.
It's just,
When it comes to Owain's point regarding devolution, I would say there's a very simple answer to that. Why it was devolved.
Mm-hmm.
And that is primarily the SNP, but also, Welsh nationalists and whatnot. Because their position now has been, because they were basically handed these powers, is basically, we will be even more lockdowny than the government.
Yes,
but imagine you would have had Scotland under lockdown on the say-so of Westminster.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yes, I can understand.
Then they would have taken exactly the opposite tack.
How dare you lock us down? Yes, I can see it.
It'd probably be better for freedom.
I would argue, from the perspective of an American, the localized approach, at least over here, is better. UK is obviously a lot smaller than the United States. It takes me days just to drive over to the West Coast. Whereas it's pretty simple to do a single day trip from one end of the UK to the other. But the thing is, there's the conditions in New York City, for example, are not the same as the conditions in the middle of Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
those are still fairly close.
I can understand them having different statewide approaches in America because they're effectively little countries. Yeah.
So why? Right, but why then, for example, would the Welsh doing their own thing, even if it's stupid, or the Scottish doing their own thing? Why is that any different? They're actually kind of their own countries.
We're not.
They have their own parliaments.
They are their own countries. The point is though that we are in a political union. It is a lot smaller. The question is not whether or not it's a stupid thing to do. It's a question of for our population density, because you have to remember we have about basically a quarter of your population, but in a much smaller area. And there's lots.
Sorry, Anna. But I was just going to say, there's also a lot of the funding aspect in the UK. So all of the schemes of job retention and all this are being done through Westminster, apart from I think in Scotland. But because Scotland has a slightly different devolution settlement to the Welsh. As for Wales, though, in particular, because I can speak about that a bit more, Wales has a lot of overlap with the English. Like in terms of, there's a lot of Welsh people who work in England who travel from Cardiff to Bristol every day, or and then there's people who do that vice versa. And it's difficult to do what they're doing now. So they're actually have patrols on the border in Wales to check, make sure that there's no English coming in or Welsh going out. Which it's not like when you're in a full union with England, essentially, as we really are, and we're so dependent upon the English. Like this 14 billion is being given to Wales to sustain us right now by the English. 14 billion a year.
So you would say that the difference is not so much like the difference between New York and Pennsylvania. It would be more like New York and New York City. In that New York City is
like upper New York State,
fairly separate, but it's actually still part of New York.
We're a lot more entwined, I think.
Yes,
than
I would agree with that assertion there, Shandy.
Okay.
Can you just pronounce the word behemoth for us, Owen?
Behemoth.
Behemoth. There we go. Behemoth.
That's the right way to say
it. But yes,
behemoth. I don't know how they want me to pronounce it in my full Welsh accent. It's behemoth.
I don't know. Just someone in chat, Forks was sitting in chat. Why can't the Welsh pronounce behemoth? And
behemoth. Well, but see, he was my favourite robot in Robot Wars. So behemoth. That's a reference for people.
That is a reference. Okay. But yeah, so we will come back on to coronavirus and stuff and the Welsh lockdowns a little bit later on, but I do really want to pound through these super chats because they're stacking up, unfortunately. Hagnar is asking you directly, Britisher, how much longer until you make a Rome series? Do I need to send you more 100 USD super chats next stream? Britisher, please respond.
As the idea tickles me. I'm not sure it would ever be a series. The idea tickles me, but at the same time, right now, I am bogged down in plenty of other stuff. So, as I said at the time, I couldn't possibly commit to anything.
Okay. It also says, stop simping for the Pope, who is clearly destroying everything you hold dear. Adopt the Protestant way or the Chad way of your forefathers and praise Mars. I don't think any of us are particularly religious at this juncture, and I'm certainly raised in a Protestant tradition, so it doesn't really matter.
I'm Welsh independent when it comes to Christianity.
Hagnar says, sigh, here you plebeian don't spend it all at one place, and sends $100. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Anakin Cringe-Walker says, having gone through the Hunter Biden leak, I saw Hunter put his Biden in his sister-in-law, his half-sister, his niece, a Chinese businessman's daughter, and possibly Malia Obama with some cocaine. Bit of a dark winter if you catch my coof. That sounds dark. Did you have to watch every single video there, Cringe-Walker? I haven't seen anything. I saw Malia Obama get mentioned in passing, but I didn't know it was that she was involved in that regard.
There's the possibility.
It was like a picture. I don't know if it's real, but there was like a picture, a credit card with her name on it. Yeah, it looked like it had cocaine dust on it. It was used to like chop up cocaine or something.
This is messy. I think, regardless of what happens with this, and how much information is revealed or not revealed. That's going to be really messy in
There's a
terms
lot
of
of dirty
just how many
laundry.
people. I mean, how long until Hunter Biden suicides? That's also a question, right? Like,
How
surprised
long
he
until
hasn't.
there's a Clinton?
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry, Hagnar. I'm not going to mention super chats which are just completely unrelated to what we're talking about. Especially if it's just like Germany and China hate. But thanks for the $5 super chat there. Kenrick says, we all know Trump loves to pander to black voters, and pointing out that Hunter is free despite his father writing the bill that sent tens of thousands of black people to prison for drug charges is a powerful move. That is an option. That is something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we're missing the fact that the coke angle is even more of a damning indictment than anything which is kind of hypothetical and will be dismissed by both sides until there's a thorough investigation.
Then again, coming at it from the angle of Trump may not necessarily be the way to go. Because, whom he promises would be in prison if he were in power, that doesn't necessarily always end up being the case, does it?
I don't know. I used to be really confident about this election and who was going to win,
Yep.
and now I've no idea.
I'm still pretty confident Trump's going to win it.
I'm fairly confident. I don't have Sargon's
Not going to be a landslide.
kind of landslide. He's going to fucking smash it kind of view.
Well,
Well,
British,
here we
I
have the
think-
problem that we've got both sides claiming they're going to win in a landslide.
Well, that's the state of what fake news has brought us to. But I think the angle that the guy was saying on the super chat wasn't that he was going to throw Hunter Biden in jail. It's that Hunter Biden is free, but yet all these black men were thrown in jail
Oh, no.
94 crime bill.
That's what I'm
And so
saying.
now, right? So now, but I think the British was coming at it from. He didn't throw Hillary Clinton in jail when he said he was going to, and he's not going to throw Hunter Biden in jail as a result, or Joe Biden. Whether or not he does, the point is the black vote might be swung a little bit more because they're going to say, yeah, anyway, he got out of it, but my uncle or who went to jail because he had a gram of weed on him, one too many times, and that might be enough to swing some voters.
Yeah, because you have triple threat, right, in America, right?
It's 3 strikes you're out. Yeah, in some places, although that has devolved a lot on a level, like California especially.
Right. Hagnar says, if British have put this much work in defending one of the noble house's failed spawn into solving the GQ, the world would be a better place. He also says Latin or GTFO. And will the Conservatives undo any of the major Blair reforms? They own your nation. What's holding them back? This is a big question. The Conservatives majority, they don't do anything. It's really irritating. The things they do, they'll make like broad sweeping changes which you would expect from the left, because the Conservatives are a left-wing party. And they do these things which you'd expect from the left, but you would expect in equal measure for them to at least protect the things which protect them. But they don't do it, It's like, oh, they'll reform the House of Lords to remove all the hereditary peers and also and also the business ones, and replace it, put an equalities minister or something in there at some point. They'd be happy to entertain the notion of that. They're happy to entertain, cross-party motions like, Jess Phillips and all her feminist rhetoric and stuff like that, and to put together committees to appease the Labourites. But they won't do anything to protect, like the old buildings. They didn't do anything to protect the statues. They aren't the party of law and order, evidently, because they're not pushing for, greater, not powers for the police, but they're not pushing for, to defend the police when they're getting attacked in the street by rioters. They're not defending heritage at the end of the day. And if the Conservatives are supposed to conserve, then they're failing miserably at that. It's really irritating.
It's what I like to refer to as the sausage machine, that it just basically sort of keeps on coming. And this actually refers to the Labour Party as much as it does to the Tories. That, you had sort of, things introduced by Michael Howard, which the Labour Party then just readily embraced as they went on as under Blair. There never seems to be that moment where they kind of stop and go, hang on a moment, shouldn't we be spending some time undoing some of the nonsense that has been introduced? Instead, they're all too keen to, we must introduce our program. We must introduce our program. And they just sort of blindly, focus on that and never actually spend time undoing some of the, obvious mistakes of the past. And, some people kind of point the finger more to the Tories. That's largely because the Tories have been in power more than the Labour Party have. But by and large, I think it's kind of the tendency of both parties to so focus on what new thing they want to do rather than ever to try and clean up after the mistakes of the past.
Isn't that
so? We kind of end up with sort of, once a mistake is on the statutes, it just stays there forever until the legal fraternity find a way of defining their way around it somehow.
Yeah, this is common, I think, across anything that involves politics. It's much more advantageous for you politically to introduce something new rather than tear down something old, especially if there are ardent supporters of that old thing. For example, you have Social Security in the United States. A large part of this country thinks that Social Security is wrong or should be reformed into something more privatized for multiple reasons, mainly economic reasons. But there's anytime somebody gets into power that says, maybe Social Security should be privatized, it's immediately dropped because there's too many old people that survive off of it, or people that are disabled that survive off of it, that as soon as you did that, everything throughout the media would be whoever's in power is killing all these people by cutting off their money. Even if, for example, you were still going to replace it with something private or whatever.
It's like there's the lag period, right? And so even if you announce that in 3 years' time, this would reform and it would be gone, and in that time that's the time you've got to put together, the charities or the businesses which are going to step in and replace the system. And even if you did that, there would still be, first off, they'd tell you that you were slaughtering people wholesale in their beds. And secondly, they would, there would still be a lag as people adjusted to the new system, and it just wouldn't work.
Well, I'm thinking more from the perspective of an election, right? Because politicians don't exist to serve the people; they exist to win elections, right? Like that's what they're incentivized to do, is win elections. And when you're thinking about what wins elections, cutting people's Social Security doesn't win elections.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So cutting back all these things, I think I'm not trying to say that the Tories are right. I'm trying to say their calculus is they believe that all these places that voted Labor forever and then all of a sudden voted Conservative are going to be lost as soon as they roll back stuff from the Blair era.
Except that they haven't clicked that the reason that they were elected was because people didn't like what the Labours were offering and have offered.
Exactly.
So
exactly, and that could come down to they're just out with the average person.
We're in this weird kind of decline at the moment because, as we're quite fond of saying on this show, we passed more laws in 4 years between 1996 and 2000 than were passed in the previous 1,000 years. So it's now. In many cases, the lumbering beast of bureaucracy, which is our state, is a lot more bloated now than it has been historically, which is, I think, contributing to part of our problems.
Absolutely.
But, it irritates me. The Conservatives not reforming things and looking at it and going, look, Blair did a load of stuff, it's really bad, we need to get rid of this now, doesn't really matter how unpopular it makes us in the short term if people start to see the benefits later on. But they don't have the spine to do it, they don't have the balls, they don't have the vision. So, they're quite comfortable to debate, whether or not black representation in Scotland is high enough, and other such nonsenses. But that's the case of it. So, I don't know if any of you have seen, because we'll move on to slightly lighter topics. I don't know if any of you have seen O-Wine in particular, whether or not you saw that Tesco responded to a woman on Twitter over the Welsh lockdown.
I did see.
Recently. So, if I pop this up on the stream, we should hopefully...
Wales in martial law.
So, Tesco is wrong, apparently, to say that... our news viewer is disappeared for a second. There we go. Tesco is wrong to say that period products are not essential.
Yep.
So the supermarket apologised after saying it could not sell sanitary towels or tampons at a store in Cardiff to a woman because they weren't essential items. The Welsh government said they were revising guidance and it will be published on Tuesday. And
so you're telling me the Welsh Parliament are misogynist then for not?
They basically forgot to list sanitary pads as.
Yeah. I refuse to call them a parliament. They have no legitimacy to be called a parliament. Thank you. It's this was very poorly thought out there. The policy of what is essential, no essential goods, like who deems what's essential or not, and why would you open a shop and not let them sell what they sell? And so obviously, for some reason, Tesco has thought that period products are not essential. I don't understand their reason, the shop's reason behind this. Were they told that toothbrushes were not essential either, and toothpaste?
That's what they claim. But they claim they were given a list. The Welsh government says we didn't issue a list. Mr. Gething, who is the health...
They did, but they just cocked up massively, so they're running back.
The health minister, Mr. Gething, told the briefing that supermarkets are now able to use their own discretion with regards to certain particular products which are being sort of queried about. It's pretty horrendous. You just have effectively great big plastic bags over shelves and signs saying, you cannot buy hand towels to replace anything at home and stuff like that.
You can't buy a kettle if it breaks. You can't
do it. It's not there. So yes,
it's ridiculous.
It's
what is
reeks of communism?
It is.
What is an essential good? What is not an essential good? Defined by the state. Like, what the hell is this?
There's something else going on here, I think.
Well, it's like if you're a student and you can't buy your textbooks because they're not an essential good.
Well, the thing is, this didn't happen during the first lockdown.
Nope.
Which is so weird. But what's so weird about it?
So what
has compelled them to do this now?
Well, you know what it is. You know that it's the first lockdown, quote unquote, didn't work. And also, they can't be seen to be doing the same thing that is perceived to have not worked again and again, because that's the definition of insanity. So what they have to do is they have to pull a different lever, as it were.
So they're throwing things at the board and just hoping something sticks.
Pretty much. Where do you think the rule of 6 and 10 p.m. curfews over here comes from?
It's also arbitrary.
It's all.
It's the thing is, the people are constantly. I put this partly on the public as well, because the public are constantly screaming for them to do something, because they've had the government do things for them for so long, especially in this country. They're scared because no one knows what to do to deal with a virus. But the problem also is that, look, have you noticed how the flu cases are down 98% this year?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's this whole thing as well about whether or not they misdiagnosed a load of cases as other stuff. Whether or not medication had an issue on the test. There was something about the first test only being 50 to 60% accurate. So it's all
really, the media needs to change tune and start trying to calm people down, because it's not as bad as they thought it was. It is bad for the vulnerable, yes, but it's not as bad for the general public, and they need to stop going to a specific subset of scientists. They say, "Oh, the science is it's not." They go to only specific scientists who say what the media want them to say.
Panic sells. That will never happen.
Well,
The media
well,
will never, out of their
well-
way, calm things down. They will only ever go the other way. Things calm down when the media shut up about stuff.
But the thing is, the only way that could stop is through government power, through more government power on the media, and you don't want that. But the thing is, they might have to come to that.
Well, the hope is, I mean, someone's got to at some point. I really hate talking about hypotheticals where it's someone X person should do X when you're not that person who's going to do it.
But
So it's like saying someone needs to create a media company and it needs to get into the public consciousness and does it, or someone needs to infiltrate the Daily Mail and turn it into a genuine operating, or someone needs to infiltrate the BBC and turn it into an actual
There are general movements now to end lockdowns. I think Steve Baker being the highest profile MP who is leading kind of the charge against lockdowns right now in Parliament. I think it's 40 MPs now who are against it as far as the last vote was in.
Right, because it was 2 the last time I checked, like a couple of months ago.
It's 40 now. I think people are really starting to get it because I think there's more. They get more and more letters into their constituency offices, and they're starting to realize like, oh shit, the polls are lying to us because the polls are obviously fixed to keep people happy. And it is there is a tide turn, and the Telegraph's against it now. I believe they've moved against lockdown.
Well, they're starting to get these things, like there was a letter with 200 health professionals or something who, as in highly qualified health professionals who protested this, including some epidemiologists. Because that's the other thing you've got to watch out for is when people from, unrelated fields start putting their names to things and people tout them as a specialist on the virus, which is different to what they actually are, which is some people who can read data, and but the interpretation of data can be confounded by obviously numerous factors. So it's, do they know what they're looking at, and how is this actually effective? The big issue was that it's not that they go to media, the scientists that they want to in terms of the media, is that they went to one particular company who hired this one guy who did all of the modelling for that and the swine flu outbreak and all that sort of thing, and he was wrong on every count every time by orders of magnitude.
See, here's the thing as well. Here's a kicker. I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, if you get the virus and you test positive, you count as one. And you go back the next week, say you're feeling better, and then you get tested, but you test positive again, you count as 2. So
Really?
and you go and get tested weekly, typically, if you're feeling better per week.
Well, so if you're an essential worker, like my ex was getting tested every fortnight.
So, exponential growth in an area could just be the same person going to get tested. Or a group of people who have got it, a small people.
Well, as soon as
going to get tested constantly.
I think they're testing something like 240,000 people a day. Or something now.
Exponential growth, say for my county of Carmarthenshire and Clonakey, they go on about, just if they go quite mad if there's only 50 people who have it. That 50 people could just be 25 people over 2 weeks.
So the only metrics that I can look at are, again, excess deaths, which are basically level. At the moment, there's no rise in excess deaths above and beyond the usual averages. And the other is to look at the hospitals, because the hospitals are the whole point of this lockdown. Theoretically, they are the whole point is to keep people out there. So whilst there are only, say, 440 people in, I think that was the figure last time I checked, who are occupying beds, not necessarily occupying ventilators, but occupying beds with coronavirus nationwide. Given that we have 31,500 ventilators, these are highly concentrated. And so, to me, again, it constantly highlights my dad has a surgery, an essential surgery that he needs to have done, and he can't have it because the hospital that they were going to do the surgery at is full of coronavirus patients, and they're ventilating people in the corridors because they don't have the space. And I'm going, like, how stupid is it? I can understand not wanting to move COVID patients to another hospital, when other people are being treated there. But if you're going to have COVID hospitals, and then schedule everything else and move out the specialists who aren't going to be doing the treatment for COVID, and move them out to other places where they're going to be used. And the NHS is just such a lumbering, inefficient machine with regards to that. It's driving me mad, because it's like you've got all this spare capacity, but they're overrun still, even when they've only they've got 20 people on ventilators, because they're just incapable of being adaptable enough.
This whole virus has shown how inefficient the government is, and the government oversight and governance of the NHS is. I'm not saying privatize it. I'm saying it needs to be reformed from top to bottom. It needs to be looked at in its entirety.
I'm saying privatize it.
Well, I know many people would say that, but
being an American, but
I stopped just short of that. Because it's never going to happen in the UK. People, it is the golden chicken,
like Social Security.
Yeah, exactly. But so it needs to be looked at in the sense that having all these separate health boards isn't working. Centralizing hospitals isn't working. That wouldn't work anyway. That's a terrible idea for a hospital to do, because hospitals would work better decentralized and being more community focused and local focused, because that's healthcare. The best healthcare is provided by someone who knows you. So we need to get back to that sort of idea of local trusts rather than this national oversight, centralized things. In Wales, big one in the Welsh government, big thing they'd be doing now, doing the same thing in education, is they're centralizing everything to such an extent that they're having one general hospital for 3 counties, which is quite ridiculous. I know in America, counties quite small things, but well, that's quite a big geographic area for the UK scale, and the general hospitals in the UK are probably a lot smaller than what they are in the US. And so to have one general hospital for my area is really difficult for people to get to, because transport links aren't great. There's no parking. It becomes an absolute mess, and you need to have these more general hospitals for general health care in the specific counties, serving those specific people and being funded by those specific people and governed by those people in that county. It doesn't need to be all these different health boards, all this different level of admin. It doesn't need to exist. It should all be taken in-house into the counties. Yeah, carry on.
Sorry. And so do you mind if I roll one of the original points you were making there about it had to do with the deaths, the number of deaths, and compared to other years. One theory that I've heard to explain that I think is not without merit, and so I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, is, well, of course the deaths are down because people are in some places lockdowns, they're wearing masks, there's social distancing. So normally in years where you don't do that, like when we have the flu, people are dying of the flu, for example, that aren't now because we've implemented these policies. So then it's hard to say that is the deaths leveling out and basically not changing. Is that the result of the coronavirus not being that deadly, or is it the result of some of the things put in place for an attempt to combat the coronavirus are actually working with regards to deaths? So I think that there is, you could maybe say, there's not much of a difference between countries that have lockdown versus countries that haven't. So then to say that the fact that it's the same is because of a reduction in deaths of other things is wrong, because expect those other countries that don't have lockdowns to have higher deaths.
As you say, you'd have to look at the granular data to understand that. You'd have to look at things like, we know that cancer deaths are spiking, and some of them will be a delayed spike as well. We know that sort of suicide and domestic violence deaths are way up, for instance. So it's really it's hard to know. And that's just two causes, right? So it's really hard to know. And I also think that because it comes to lockdown, we won't know necessarily as well how many, especially old people, may have died in their homes. until they start coming in. So I don't think we can give a proper answer. All I can say is that we had the first lockdown, and despite the first lockdown, we had this big spike in deaths alongside the cases that we were able to observe. And now we don't appear to be having that. You can draw your own conclusions from that, but that's what it is observable at the moment.
What's happening is, in my theory, is that we are having an increase in cases of the virus, but what's happened is the virus is acting like a flu would during an annual season.
Well, it's ebbing and flowing, is it?
Well, it's acting in a similar manner the flu would act at this time of year. It's going to be increasing at a steady pace. It's not spiking. It's a steady pace increase, and so beds are filling up as well, as they say. But the beds do fill up this time of year as well for flu patients at the same time. It's becoming a lot more like an endemic. It's acting a lot more like an endemic influenza rather than an endemic coronavirus.
Well, we're looking at it and we're going, well, according to the data, across all age ranges, and obviously we know it does vary considerably, the fatality rate on it appears to be about 0.8%, which is about the same as the flu case fatality rate. It's
become very similar to an endemic virus, and the thing is, it's a matter of that there is no need for a lockdown.
Well, it's not that there's no need for a lockdown. It's what is the purpose of the lockdown? And if the purpose is to prevent hospitals to be not overrun whilst we move up capacity, that capacity has already been increased and extra hospitals have been built. You are not going to kill a virus which has the mutagenic properties of the common cold, which is another coronavirus strain. Different coronavirus. So it's not going away. It's never going away. And even if you could eradicate it entirely within your own borders, you would have to rely on a global effort, effectively, which would involve every country in the entire world successfully managing the same thing, so that you could then open your borders in order to have travel in between. Because otherwise, like the scale of that is absolutely mind-boggling, and so I have no truck with it. I'm going, look, the vulnerable know that they're vulnerable. I don't know anyone who isn't vulnerable who doesn't. I don't know anyone who's underestimating the threat to themselves. Because if you're young, you're not really at risk, and if you're old, you are at risk. The people who are young who have vulnerable relatives and vulnerable friends and whatnot know this as well and take extra precautions if they are this way. And I don't see what it's gonna do. It's not gonna solve anything. And
I think about it in the long term though. Next year now because we've been in lockdown over winter, and that means the flu hasn't gone around, and that means there's going to be another strain. There's going to be an alien strain next year. The flu is going to be far more deadly next year because the body hasn't built an immunity to the previous strain properly. So locking down is, I think, actually counterintuitive to actually making these things less deadly.
At least at first, it made sense because we had no data on it. But now that we know a lot more about this virus, it does not make sense, I agree, to lock down at all, because what you're doing is you're giving it a chance to mutate. You're giving other diseases, like you're saying, a chance to become more deadly to people because they haven't had a chance to build up an immunity. And in the process, you're destroying your country's economy, which is in turn going to affect how well it's able to provide healthcare to people. So you're beyond the initial lockdown to say, we don't know if this is the next Ebola or if this is just some super flu, right? In which case, then we can treat it like we do the flu, that every year we come up with a new vaccine of it that's for that particular strain that we think is going to happen, and then we continue to live our lives. The initial lockdown makes sense, but beyond that, it does not. It really doesn't.
I mean, the World Health Organization's official advice is don't do a lockdown because they don't work.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we're only doing it because it's a media buzzword. The media love doing
it is politicized entirely.
Yeah, because the media in the UK, especially, was already talking about, should we have a second lockdown back in September? And they were already going on about it, and immediately that's laying the groundwork. The politician's going to do it because it's in the public conscience, and they're going to start demanding it. It is honestly, it's now it's the politicians following the media's demand rather than actually following the science, because the media is driving everyone into a frenzy.
It was never about science to begin with.
Oh, it isn't. It's popularity contest at the point by all
right.
means.
And it's also, they make this whole thing was built upon a fallacy of authority, that you pointed to somebody who apparently is an expert, but experts are wrong all the time. Because any expert that says they definitively, any expert that says they definitively know something with beyond a shadow of a doubt, without any issues whatsoever, any caveats, is a moron. If you have a doctorate in a particular area, the number one thing you understand as someone who uses the scientific method is there's tons of things that you don't know and can't possibly know. And the whole point of the scientific method is to admit what you don't know and attempt to answer those questions, but you don't go into that with a predetermined answer and then find the answer like, oh, look, we said it was going to be this, and look, it was this, and because you ignored all the data that pointed in the other direction.
Correct.
But there we go. I'm just going to go through the last 3 super chats and then bring us to a close, gentlemen, because we are approaching the 2-hour point, and unfortunately, I got issues with my legs, and there's not much I can do about it. But Plebeian says, I have a 24/7 live channel devoted to the protection and appreciation of martial music, military marches, and songs from Britain, Germany, the US, Prussia, Austria, and so on. Censorship shall not prevail. The channel is called The Regiment. So thank you for that, Plebeian. I've shilled that out for you. Aaron Telford says, hashtag Britisher for PM. Hashtag not so obvious for Deputy PM. Britisher, do you think we should ever be allowed near the reins of power? I bet
my first decision shall be to get rid of the Deputy PM.
No! And my first decision as Deputy PM shall be to lead a coup against the existing PM. A coup d'etat in a single night. There we go.
My decision as Junior Secretary shall be just to watch it all happen.
That's what I'll be doing. I'll be sitting over here eating popcorn. Civil War within 30 seconds. Awesome.
And DRT is King says, wanted to say hi to Mark. Oh, yes, because I complained on the... I did a stream with Don the Pleb on Sunday, and I complained midway through that everyone sent in super chats saying hi to to all my guests, but never to me. So it's just saying, thank you very much for that, DRT is King. It says, remember this, the Democratic Party has always been a malicious force in world history. The sooner it is dead, the better. Is there anything where the Democrats were on the right side of history? Open to anyone from the panel?
When Truman was in office, they were. And when Kennedy was in office. Other than that, I don't know.
I would even say to some extent when Obama took over from Bush that the move to the Democrats was the correct move in terms of the Republicans had made so many mistakes that it was hard to see how they were going to hold on to things, right?
Watergate?
Yeah. Watergate.
Well, that wasn't so much the Democrats as it was Nixon being too arrogant. So I don't know.
Oh, yes, but Nixon was the Republican. So
yeah, but that doesn't mean that the Democrats then were.
Oh,
we lost him, have we?
Hello?
Say again?
That doesn't necessarily mean that the Democrats were then good just because the Republicans were bad.
I know, but there's bad and there's less bad. So it's just...
So they were just less bad.
Politicians.
Fair. I'll give you that.
Yeah. All right then. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to this Halloween edition of Fake Accents Unite. Although I don't think we actually covered anything to do with Halloween, so maybe we'll see what else. Maybe this could be.
The virus is scary enough.
The virus was. I mean, it's, what the consequences of the virus are scary enough. Yes.
Great reset. Yeah.
Mirror J in chat is saying Oral Naught Star Wars. I watched that the day it came out. I found that channel and I found that Star Wars. It's great. If you're interested in Star Wars parodies, and Oral Naught is definitely worth your time. And yeah, it's so I hope you've had fun. even though the topics for tonight have been somewhat dark, I would say in general, the lockdown and drugs and sex and stuff, this stream is definitely getting demonetized. But thank you very much for that. Thank you very much to my guests. Thank you to the Britisher for joining us as always.
It's an honour and a privilege, as ever.
Thank you very much to the representatives of Scotland and Wales, Owain and Tailed Feature, not necessarily in that order.
Thanks for inviting me, even though I said pretty much nothing the whole time.
A man of few words, but appreciated when he speaks there, that Tailed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Owain, and thank you to our new guest, the Shandy. Do let him know do let us know in the comments what you thought of his performance over the course of this evening. I think it's been an absolute pleasure to have him here. We'll definitely have him back at some point. And yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to all the super chatters, and yeah, I hope that you all have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Thank you for
Thank you for having me.